The survivors of the Armenian genocide from Western Armenia found refuge all over the world, many of which settled in the United States, especially in California's Central Valley. Second and third generation artists such as Richard Hagopian, a master oud player associated with the Kef tradition of Armenian-American music, have kept their folk traditions alive. His grandson, Andrew Hagopian, who's with me here today, is honoring this tradition by continuing to play our folk music, recording its history, and making it available for the future generations exiled from their homeland. This dance-oriented style of Armenian music, using Armenian and Middle Eastern folk instruments and some Western instruments, preserved the folk songs and dances of Western Armenia. However, music is alive. It evolves and adapts based on its environment. Bands such as the Vospigyan Band of Philadelphia were notable in the 1940s and 50s for developing their own style of Kef music, heavily influenced by the popular American big band jazz of the time. Another oud player, John Berberian from Massachusetts, is notable in particular for his fusions of traditional music with rock and jazz in the 1960s, most famous of which was an album titled The Oud and the Fuzz. But it goes both ways, and what Armenians brought to the United States also had its impact on American culture and its music. In today's episode, Andrew Hagopian, a third-generation Armenian-American Oudi, will take us through this musical pastime of our Armenian-American diaspora. Join us as we explore examples of this cultural fusion that took place in the mid-20th century, as well as some classic folk songs played on the Oud by Mr. Oud Jr. You're listening to Haituk Talks, the official podcast of the AYF West. I'm Haig Minasyan.
A cousin of Armenians talking in the world.
Andrew, you had me dancing over here on this side. You guys, I'm having such a good time today. I'm in Fresno. I'm at Andrew's studio right now. This is a real hike vacation in Fresno, California, where I'm seeing all this Armenian history around me. We went to the Armenian Genocide Museum earlier. Thank you, Andrew. And then here in Andrew's studio, you have, I don't know, Fresno's history, Fresno's music history, Armenian-American music history everywhere, and it's the coolest place. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Hike, for having me. This is excellent. We welcome you to Fresno. We hope that you return
Oh, hell
many
yeah.
more times.
Oh, 100%.
This has been fun.
Yeah, so far so good. I mean, the whole day's been like a podcast of us going back and forth. But what's the name of that song you just played?
So the song I just played, I opened with a taksim in the mode of neva, which led into a song made popular by Hrant Kenkulian, or known as Udi Hrant, called Parov Yegar Sirunyar, which was written by his brother-in-law, Udi Bogos, who was also blind.
Were they both blind?
They were both blind.
Because I just saw his picture on one of those covers, and he's wearing the dark glasses.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Udi Hrant is a very famous name. I've heard his name a lot. I mean, he's would you say the godfather of like oud players, maybe?
I would say that he was the pioneer of oud playing in America.
For sure.
Because he created a second generation of oudis here in America. 4 days after his birth in Adapazar, he was actually declared blind.
Oh
and it's funny enough that the person he married, the sister, also married Udi Bogos, who was also blind. So they were both blind brother-in-laws.
So that's both sisters married, they're both blind, but and they both played oud. They're both amazing musicians. That could be a movie in itself, man.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Well, and then Udi Hrant, he didn't live here, but he would come to America a lot to play.
Yes.
And he taught your grandfather, right, Richard Hagopian?
Yes, he
the next generation of
taught him
players.
A couple of things, not too much, but enough to where he passed on the title to 5 Udis in America, including my grandfather, Richard Hagopian, Udi Harry Manassian, Udi John Berberian, Udi George Magardichin, and Udi Chikganemian.
By the way, Harry Manassian, no relation, but I wish you guys. But no, I grew up going to picnics at Camp Haston on the East Coast, and I remember seeing John Barbarian there. A lot of these names are very familiar to me. I'm a big oud fan, you could say. But I didn't know they had this title of Udi up until recently, actually. I think you brought it to my attention. And it seems it's this art form, it's this ancient art form that isn't really practiced anymore too much. I think you're the only Udi that I know in person. There's not that many, right, left around.
It's an accomplishment which acknowledges Armenian history as well as the technique of playing oud. We also have the title for kanun players, kanuni.
Yeah.
So the ui means the master of, and so that title is given from one master to another. By tradition of a certificate, either signed or, in the case of Udi Hrant, because he was blind, he couldn't sign his name. He has a thumbprint. Hey. So an ink thumbprint was on each one of those certificates.
Have you seen? Oh, so you have seen his thumbprint before?
Yes, I have seen his thumbprint on my grandfather's certificate.
That's crazy.
And now I can say that I have my grandfather's signature on my very own certificate.
I actually see it right here, huh?
Yes.
On the wall. So the song you just played, Parov Yegar Sirunyar. Who taught you that song?
So, getting into my lessons, my first instrument was not actually the oud. I learned the kanun.
Oh.
Okay? And I received a grant from the state of California to learn the kanun as an apprentice to my grandfather, Richard Hagopian, who taught me the technique of playing the kanun as well as the Armenian modal system. He taught me chord progressions, melodic transitions, the fingering technique, the picking technique of the kanun, how to change the mandals, tuning the instrument, maintenance of the instrument. But that was the extent of the lessons.
Okay.
He would teach me only the techniques needed to play the instrument. He would not teach me songs per se.
The rest of it was up to you?
The rest of it was up to me and my ear. So I had to learn the modes, then go home and listen to the music. After listening to the music, I was assigned to pick songs and determine which modes they fell under. And from there, I would pick my favorite song, I'd learn it by ear, I'd go to the lesson, and he'd listen to me play the song, and he'd say, do it a little differently, try doing this, try doing that. Other than that, he told me nothing else. He just wanted me to play the song as it was composed, as it should be played.
And do you think that made you better artist or a better musician because of that?
It did, because he didn't influence my playing. He didn't tell me, oh, you should do a trill here, you should do, do certain things that he would have done. He just told me how to play the song, and he let me do the rest by my own creative imagination. I take from artists like John Berberian, Harry Minassian Chick, all of them. Even my own grandfather. People say I sound like Richard Hagopian, but that's not the goal. My goal is to take a little bit of John, take a little bit of Harry, take a little bit of Richard, mix them together and see what comes out.
Call it Andrew.
And that's Andrew.
That's how music works anyway. That's how art works in the first place. Right. And I think that is part of the genius of it, is it's allowing for that own personalized individual. You're able to express yourself in an original way because of that freedom in the beginning there. So, and so how long have you been playing, like your whole life? When did this begin for you?
So, from an early age, I grew up in a traditional Armenian family household. My story really begins 4 years before I was born with my brother.
Okay.
In 1995, my parents gave birth to my brother, Philip Hagopian, who, from the day he was born, he fell in love with the music. And it wasn't ever pressured on either of us as brothers from our grandfather to like the music or play the music. It just happened naturally. Some people say it's in the genes. Some people have theories, oh, if you listen to it and it falls. It just happened.
It's probably all of it and more, and that's how it works anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so my brother, he started strumming on a little oud, a miniature kid-sized oud. He wasn't really playing songs. He knew the songs. He could sing them like a child would, just having fun. And then I was born. And he was always playing it. So not only was he listening to the music and playing it, but I grew up with a partner. I grew up with, someone that I could express this creative interest.
Right.
We weren't normal children in the sense that, you can buy your child a toy and that's their imagination. They make what of it is. Our toys growing up were instruments and the music.
You were playing Udi.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's play Udi.
We would watch VHS tapes of my grandfather and his band and other musicians playing the music, and we'd sit in front of the TV. I'm maybe 1 or 2 years old. I can't even speak yet, and my head's bobbing back and forth. I'm making facial expressions of the musicians as they're playing. I'm making sounds, like trying to sing. And then, I became of an age where I was like maybe 3 years old. This is where I started pounding out rhythms on a drum.
Yeah.
And one of my biggest inspirations growing up was Buddy Sarkeesian.
Yeah.
Buddy was a very new age type of drummer. He took traditional Armenian dumbek playing to the max. He made it Americanized. He brought in other drums and modified them so that he can hit it with their hand. And it kind of created the concept of the drum set, but with dumbegs. So
all different types of drums in front of him.
All different types of drums, and he was playing them simultaneously.
Yeah.
And so I'd watch videos of him, and I would watch, and I just, copy him.
Well, what's even cooler is you probably got to meet these guys. Like, they'd come over, and your grandpa or parents would be like, oh, this is the guy you saw on that VHS tape, or this is the guy playing, right? They'd come around.
Being that related to Richard, my grandfather, I didn't get to meet all of them, as some of them had passed.
Yeah.
But I got to meet Jack Chalikian. I've had the pleasure of meeting Hachi Kazarian, the clarinet player, along with other people who've played in the band over the years.
A lot of those legends and stuff.
Yes,
I'm jealous.
So I was always surrounded by their talents and their inspiration. And, growing up, they also promoted the music. They also, Dugas, Hachi Kazarian would always say to me, Dugas, good job, Dugas, you're doing a good job. Like, he always applauded me, and
that's good.
He always, he'd always tell me if something was wrong. Hey, play softer, play this. He always critiqued me, which was good.
Well, I have to say, Andrew, like a lot of the names you're mentioning right now, maybe our parents' generation, maybe the America High generation would recognize these, but a lot of us don't know about these older American Armenian generations. Maybe they're a little bit more prevalent or well known on the East Coast. And Fresno's a very old Armenian American community. And so I want to just kind of quickly sum up, or not sum up, but explain how even before the genocide, Armenians were moving to the United States, and a lot of them came to Fresno. So, Andrew, was your family part of this initial wave of Armenian immigrants, or did they come after the genocide to Fresno, California?
So there was part of my family known as the Barigin clan.
Mm-hmm.
We come from the regions of Bitlis.
Okay.
And part of the clan stayed in Bitlis and part moved to Erzurum. And the year was about 1909.
Okay, just before the genocide.
Just before the genocide, it had already started taking place. They had already started, yes.
Yeah.
And the Barigin clan from Bitlis had then moved over to Erzurum to deliver a message to our side of the family. They came and they settled there for a while, and they made a living with us. And they had friends in the higher government of the Ottoman Empire at the time who said, you know, this is what's going to take place. This is our warning to you as our friends. Get out while you can.
Yeah, get out. And
so the Barigin clan told my great-grandfather, Avedis Hagopian, great-great-grandfather, this is what's happening. We've been warned. You should leave with us to America.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, why should I leave? Times are good here. I have more business than usual with the Turks and the Kurds, and, you know, we're living friendly amongst them. Everything's going good. And it was.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no one would have had a clue unless you had the warning that this was going to happen. And so that half stayed. The Hagopian clan stayed. Mm-hmm. While the Barigin clan moved to Fresno. They migrated here. And so during the genocide, my great-grandfather Khosrov was a young boy at the time in school. And one day they came to the school, and they said, this school is now shut, and you guys go home to your parents, collect some things, and meet in the middle of the village. So he ran home. He saw his parents packing up a few little trinkets, some pictures, maybe a couple small books. You know, they couldn't carry a lot.
Whatever they can hold.
Whatever they could hold. Some gold pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, the gold pieces is what ended up saving my great-grandfather, which is why I'm here today.
Yeah.
So they met in the middle of the village, and the Turkish official said, we're going to relocate you guys to a new destination. And so my great-grandfather, looking behind him, saw the last glimpses of his hometown, Erzurum, as he was marched out. So I'm going to shorten the story. They ended up going to Istanbul from there to be in an orphanage.
Right.
And from there, they came over, because the Barigins here, they were able to bring the Hagopians over on a quota.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask if the Barigans already knew someone in Fresno at that point to get them in, or they just
the Barigans, they did know a Protestant priest here.
Okay.
Because most of the people who immigrated to Fresno were Protestants, and the minister who was here, they knew the minister, Vartanian.
Had a connection.
They had a connection, and they were able to bring the Barigans over. And then the Barigans brought the Hagopians.
Well, that's how it was in a lot of places. The Kharpertsis that went to Worcester were also had connections with these Protestant missionaries and everything. So, you know, this was another way that actually America was very important in saving a lot of Armenian orphans at the time with the Near East Foundation, but also in helping Armenians escape and as refugees come to America and establish themselves here. So they come here, but was your family, it wasn't a family of musicians or anything, right? Was your grandpa, let's say, the first person as the Hagopians to be a master oud player?
My grandfather was the first one to learn the oud, and in that day, it was looked down upon to become a musician. Musicians were low-paid people that weren't very successful. You know, they worked in nightclubs.
Well, what do you think? Our parents today will probably say the same thing half the time. You have to be a lawyer, doctor, but so it sounds like it's always it's within every generation. And don't worry.
Yes, but especially back then, the pressure was. My great-grandfather enjoyed to dance, and he loved the music. And when my grandfather first picked up the oud, he borrowed his first oud from one of his uncles, because it was hard to get an oud at that time. You had to send away for an oud. It wasn't easy to get an oud.
I can imagine.
And so he became very well known with the musicians who immigrated to this part of the country, to Fresno. And he played in the old-time bands, and he would sit in with them, and this is how he became close with Kanuni Garbis. Kanuni Garbis was really his teacher of the oud. It wasn't really Udi Haran. Udi Haran finished the lessons, but Kanuni Garbis taught him the basics of the oud and Kanun at the same time, but mostly the oud. So he was the student of Kanuni Garbis on the oud. And when Hrant came, there was a big concert at the original Fresno State campus. And it was a big thing. Hrant's coming to America. This was the first time he was coming. And my grandfather, they allowed no children to come to the concert except for my grandfather. It was almost destiny because it was a serious thing back then. You know, you don't bring your kids to a concert. This was Udi Harant, and this is a very serious thing. No kids.
Yeah.
But because my grandfather was in it with the musicians, they said, we'll make the exception. This is beyond, you know, this is not an ordinary child.
Yeah.
So my grandfather's sitting there. I've heard this story tons of times. He's looking on stage before Harant even comes out, and this Oud is sitting there.
The one you're showing me right now?
The one I'm playing today.
Oh, no way.
And it's brand new at the time. And it's sitting on a piano, a grand piano. And there's another Oud that looks identical to it. There's two Ouds, and they're just beautiful instruments. And so he says to his father, oh man, if I could only have that Oud, if I could play that Oud, you know, have it, own it. And he's like, oh, don't worry, let's see what we can do, you know. And during intermission, Kanuni Garbis introduced his father and him to Udi Harant. And him not knowing, his father bought the Oud from Harant. He played this instrument in the concert. Yeah. And Harant actually gave him a blessing there. He put his hand on his head and said, when you grow up, may you become Harant. May you become like me.
Yeah, Udi.
Yeah, you know. And so as Harant came and left over the years, he came to L.A., and my grandfather would always drive down to L.A., meet him, play with him, you know, see certain things that he did. And on those trips, that's when he earned that title.
Yeah.
And I don't think he really intended it to become a career in the way it ended up becoming because at a young age, he lost his father.
Oh. How old was he?
He was maybe in his 20s, not soon after that concert.
Well, so then there's pressure on the son to, like, you know, take care of the family at that point if the father's gone, right?
Yes. And he dropped out of, he was enrolled in college. He didn't go. He was about to start, and he had to drop out to run the family farm. Mm-hmm. He became a farmer.
Yeah, classic.
And so he did that, and then it just so happened to be that he was playing people's weddings now at this time, you know, with the local group, and his name was becoming well known. And this guy from Yetem by the name of Gogian, he lived in Las Vegas, and Buddy Sarkeesian at the time was running the Cleopatra Review with Freddie Elias, and he had another oud player.
This is a Vegas show.
This is the Vegas show, and Manny Petro. And the oud player got in some trouble with the casino, as they all did, musicians. If you were asked to leave Vegas, it was usually because you were in debt or something happened. So Buddy was in search of an oud player, and John Gogian says to Buddy, well, you're looking for an oud player? Well, the best oud player is in Fresno, California. His name's Richard Hagopian. And he's like, I don't know a Richard Hagopian. And so
they got in touch.
And my grandfather was running the farm. He had 3 kids now. My dad was just born. Buddy came out to the farm. He looked at the kids, and he didn't even ask him to be part of the show during this. He came to meet him, and my grandfather knew why he was coming because he said he's looking for an oud player. Mm-hmm. And so my grandfather said, as he's leaving, I know why you came. And he's like, well, I see you're busy here with the kids and everything. I don't want to bother you. And he's like, just come in. Let's see what we can do. And so they talked, they played music, they brought out the rachi and all that, the meze. And so he got hired in the show.
Yeah.
And there it took off.
I know there's a part of your grandpa that probably really wanted to do that. You know, at the end of the day, he wanted to explore where the oud could take him and play in a show and stuff. So, I mean, we're all glad about it at the end of the day too, because, I mean, he's one of my favorite oud players, and what he did for Armenian culture, Armenian music is, it'll live on forever. And look at it now, like you're getting to continue his legacy in a way, but also getting to appreciate the art in the first place. You know, if he maybe it would be different if things had changed or weren't the way that they were. But so Richard Hagopian was, like, let's say the main Udi player from Fresno. Out of those 5 Udis that you named, is he the only one from Fresno?
He was the West Coast musician.
The main West Coast guy.
The rest were
like
all
Michigan,
East Coast.
Yeah,
Boston area, New York. You know.
Yeah. Well, so can you? All right, let's play another song. Could you play something that your grandpa would maybe play a lot? One of these Udis would. A song that maybe comes from your grandfather that either reminds you of him or he taught you?
So, one song that was actually featured in a recent documentary, What Will Become of Us by Stephanie Ayanyan.
Oh, yeah, I saw it, yeah.
I was learning the song Marojan in that particular scene of the documentary. And so this song was composed by one of the Ashurs of Eastern Armenia. It's a love song. And it translates to, "Oh Maro, my sweetheart, don't plant a lot of khan. I will go to Tiflis and protect the burning. I will die for your height and beauty." And then the chorus is, "For your red blouse, I will die. For your long blouse, I will die. I shall die for the blouse that only you sew." It's
classic Armenian love songs.
Very
Boyov and Mernem.
metaphorical.
Yeah, it's great.
It's about nature. He's referring to the planting of the seeds.
Yes.
And
Springtime is here. Let's hear it.
it's a very beautiful song.
Marojan.
Marojan şan mizaner pambak, Marojan şan mizaner pambak, Gerdam Tiflis vrad gınem kandat, yana yana yesev boy mernim, yana yana yesev boy mernim, al bul sit mernim, şal bul sit mernim, maroy garat bul sit
To all the mottos out there, that one was for you. So imagine I'm Odar or someone just doesn't know anything about the Oud. How would you explain, hey, oh, you play music? What do you play? How do you explain that to them?
So I always explain the Oud as the grandfather to the guitar. It's the basic,
best way to explain it to them.
best way, because it's a fretless instrument. It's very similar to the guitar in the sense that it has 6 sets of strings, 5 strings doubled because it's paired in unison, but it's also tuned in octaves and fourths. But it's basic concept of the guitar, just fretless. It's almost a violin in a sense. But this is the modern framework of the guitar. They had to base it off something.
So you just tell them it's the OG guitar essentially. But I mean, from what you were saying earlier, your grandfather playing in Vegas with the Cleopatra show. I mean, it seems like then people are either aware of it or it's a sound that's been already adopted in Hollywood in a sense, right? I mean, how recognizable is the oud in maybe American culture, or even at least with artists and producers?
The instrument of the oud and kanun are both very recognized because at a certain time, we're talking about the 50s and the 60s, jazz artists and different artists wanted to expand their sound. They were looking for new things.
Exotic, maybe.
Exotic, psychedelic, psychedelic punk sound.
Yeah.
So they were looking for different cultures.
Is that why you hear like the sitar sometimes, like the Indian sitar?
Sometimes.
Like the hippie music maybe. But.
Or they've taken the oud and they have a oud player play some different riffs on it, and they added on their albums and stuff. So we have a lot of influence in American culture, which we'll be taking a look at today, actually.
I'm down. No, I mean, could you give us an example of something like that where they took this exotic oud sound and used it in an American song, maybe?
So I think we should start with a little journey of how this music came about, how they found the inspiration.
Okay.
So in one of my Clubhouse discussions that you were on, you were very excited about this one particular album, and this was one of the earliest albums for Armenians. This came out in 1954. It's called The Oud Orchestra Traveling for Kef. And on the cover is a 1955
Chrysler?
Cadillac.
Cadillac.
It was Cadillac. And so what ended up happening was the band, they recorded this album with one microphone, because at the time, that was how they recorded things. They just all sat around one microphone, one take, they cut the album.
Yeah.
So, and that represented, an album was representative of the music and of the band, to demonstrate what the band could do. Anyways, they decided, how cool would it be to take a picture
in one of these cars.
in one of these very fancy cars. So they went to Cadillac and they were going to take a picture in a car, but then they saw out of the corner of their eye a new car that they hadn't seen before. And
the next year's edition or
the
something.
next year's edition hadn't even rolled out. They haven't even put out pictures of the thing yet. And they said, what could we do to get our picture in that car? You know, because the new car, the new year, it would be great seller.
Huge. Oh, it'd be huge.
And they said, there's no possible chance of you getting a picture in that car.
Who are these Armenians
Right.
trying to get?
So they talked for a while and they managed to cut a deal with them. They said, you know, you cannot produce this album until that car comes out.
You can't like release it or whatever.
Can't release it.
Yeah.
So they said, okay, they signed the contract.
Deal.
Just so happened that they cut the deal, they made the covers, they had it all prepared, and that year they had a big dance. It was a big Armenian function. And they said, well, we can't pass this up because this is how you would sell an album back in the day. They didn't have Amazon, they didn't have eBay, they didn't have CD Bay.
This is the opportunity to
This
do
is
it.
the opportunity. People are coming from all over to be at this event. So they said, how are they going to know?
Like, screw
you know.
it. Let's do it.
Are they really checking to see? So
The Armenian dance.
they pulled out the album, they put it on stage while they were playing, and people went crazy over it. And because it wasn't particularly because of the band or the music, it was because they said, wow, what is this car?
We've never seen it
They've
before.
never seen it before. So it became very popular. And so this was one of the first LP records. We have the first generation that immigrated who were survivors of the genocide who recorded the 78 records. But as far as the first generation born here in America, these were the first people. The Oud Orchestra was the first ones to record an LP.
It's such a cool photo, and I'll be making sure to post this on our social media, you guys. But it's pretty G. It's awesome. Simon Javizian. But so, I mean, just seeing the Armenian instruments next to or on top of this Cadillac is talk about the mix right there, or the inspirations and stuff.
You have very traditional instruments on a very modern American culture. You have Armenian culture and American culture coming together.
It's symbolic as hell.
So then we have this album called Armenian Wedding by Mike Sarkisian. The Sarkisian brothers grew up in Lowell, Massachusetts. And from a young age, they enjoyed drumming. And that's how Buddy became a drummer. He was a percussionist, American percussionist, but they grew up like my brother and I, playing with each other, playing music, and Mike liked to sing. And so he cut his first record with a very big company, Audio Fidelity. And in that day, it was hard. It was harder to get, a contract with them. But they were also looking for people to record of outside cultures, other than American cultures. So this came out, and this is really the mix between that traditional village sound and what was coming out.
So 1965 on there, huh?
Yes. The Sarkeesian brothers were really pioneering the new sound. This was 58. 1958. Oh, just slightly after that one.
Damn.
This is 1958. And Buddy was the one who changed the sound, in my opinion, because he was the one who took the concept of the multiple drums and started mixing it in.
Oh, true.
It wasn't very traditional to have more than just an oud, a doumbek player, and maybe a violin player in the orchestra.
Yeah.
So now they have multiple drums. You had a bottom. You had this very interesting rhythm that they had created. And
Buddy was that guy who played with your grandfather a lot in Vegas.
In Vegas.
That show, yeah.
And this is where some jazz artists saw them perform live.
Oh, that's actually true. Imagine all the people that went to Vegas, and that was like, the early height of Vegas era,
Right.
The
some
Rat
very
Pack.
big names. Even some of the Rat Pack would come and watch the show.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Some jazz artists would come up on stage and perform with them sometimes, they enjoyed the music. So
I'm
then
not surprised.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
So then we have people, it went both ways. American music influenced Armenian music, and Armenian music influenced American music. So I'm actually going to start with the American influence on Armenian music, because it wasn't until later that the Americans started taking the Armenian music and changing their music. So we have Chik Ganimian, Udi Chik Ganimian, who was very revolutionary to the oud playing technique. He did things that was not very traditional.
He was having more fun with it.
He was having more fun with it, and he listened to American music a lot.
Yeah.
And so you can hear that in his playing. So he'd play songs like Over the Rainbow, My Funny Valentine, also other Armenian songs like Dari Lolo and Halva, Jihalva, and all those kind of different things. And he found ways of playing with American bands. He would bring in different musicians, jazz quartets, and he would record these songs.
So he would take Armenian songs, but then do them in an American style, let's say?
Yes.
Can we hear one of them?
And he would also take American songs and play them with the Armenian instruments.
Sounds or whatever.
Right. So let's take a look at one song that he did called Over the Rainbow.
Okay.
That's a very common song in American culture. It was made popular in Wizard of Oz.
I was going to say.
And this is the first time we hear that he's taking an American song and playing it on the oud.
That was awesome. That was so cool. I think that's my favorite version of that song now. And I mean, the whole album is like that, huh?
Yeah, the whole album. You gotta hear the other tracks on this album. It's beautiful.
How do we not know about this? How do we? I mean, I know you know, but like, how do the rest of us not know about this?
It just kind of fell out of the radar for Armenians. The music progressed faster than we could keep up. Same thing like technology in the world today. It's progressing at a speed which we forget
quick.
about whatever came out previous to this. I can even use this example with modern day music. Songs that I grew up listening to in high school, like American music I'm talking about now, are no longer prevalent today because there are new artists who just came out with new hits, and they play that on the radio constantly to where you forget about the other ones.
You're right.
And when you do hear that song again, you say, oh, I remember this in high school, but it's so old at this point, This is how this music has become.
But I'm thinking in the sense that there's a lot of artists that will take from oldies, and then like remix it or make it new or take some inspiration from it. These would be so cool to inspire like a new generation of this kind of stuff. We do kind of see Armenians do these things, but this to me is so cool to see. So
yeah, this is something that and they had the inspiration to do.
And this is Chicken. No, this was the Sarkeesian. Okay, this is Chicken.
This is Chick.
And I know he also did another one. I think you were telling me earlier he did Sude as well, right?
That was Guy Chakurian.
Oh, that's Guy.
That's Guy Chakurian.
Can we put the Guy Chakurian one on, or just like for a second?
Sure. Let's take a listen to him because he was definitely Guy Chakurian was a person who really took his talents of being a comedian, entertainer, and his love for music, and he wanted to give the Armenian audience something new and creative. So what he would do is he'd take American pop songs at the time, like the Ballad of Davy Crockett, or even Open the Door, Richard. These were big songs.
And he made it into Armenian?
And he made it into Armenian.
Well, so because I think you were showing me earlier, and we're not gonna play the whole thing, but I want you, because everyone does know the song "Sude Sude." You guys gotta hear this. It's the English version of the song, and it's pretty awesome. I want to say hilarious, but it's also very cool at the same time.
This is an Armenian song called Sude Sude. The word Sude means not real. And since this song is sung in broken English, the man says no real instead of not real. And what he's trying to say is that everything in this crazy old world is not real. Or as he puts it, no real. I come this country a couple years ago, everything alright, but music I don't know. You play at the jazz on the radio all day long, now I sing for you good old country song. This song no is jazz, no real is the name. Maybe you know like, but I sing just the same. No real, no real, no real, no real, everything no real. In this crazy world, everything no real.
No real. It's so funny, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how he took those songs. He took Armenian songs, made American songs Armenian.
Yeah.
It's a creative genius right there, in my opinion.
It's very creative, and I think honestly, it's funny because I'm imagining even at that generation, they're thinking the Armenian kids these days, they don't care about Armenian music or this and that. And here's ways of like kind of mixing the two and making it engaging for maybe like a more Americanized generation. Even today, we're getting more creative with how to maybe present Armenian music in different ways to either the new generation here and there. So
I don't know if it was so much that. I think it was more of a way of connecting Armenians to American culture.
Oh.
Trying to make them fit in and giving them a way of, because Armenians liked American culture. They liked the swing and pop music and all of that. And so artists like Guy Chakurian and the next artist I'm going to discuss found a way to make themselves different than the other artists like my grandfather and John Berberian at the time. So we have Artie Barsamian, who was also another early pioneer, and he was the first one to do the concept of a big band. You know, it's traditional, as I said, to have a dumbek, oud, and violin. He took it. He was a clarinet player. He had a saxophone player, a guitar player, a percussionist, multiple dumbek players, like maybe 2 or 3 dumbegs, maybe another saxophone. It was like a big orchestra.
It's an orchestra, yeah.
And so he would play Armenian songs, but in this fashion. And what made him so special was, at the time, people liked to hire Armenian bands and an American band. He could do both because he also knew American music. So his group would play American music
and Armenian music,
as well as Armenian music.
Smart for business.
Instead of hiring 2 bands, you just had to hire Artie Barsamian.
Yeah.
So
genius. Well, so you're saying did the Armenian music then have American influence in it, or the other way around, or a little bit of both?
This is Armenian music with American influence.
Okay.
Then we're gonna see Armenian. We're gonna see also another form of Armenian music with American influence, with the type of playing. This is instrument influence. You know, we never had guitar or bass guitar or keyboard in our music up until about
later on
70s,
80s,
60s, all that. So this was really the pioneer of that. And so we'll hear, you're going to hear a mixture of traditional sounding as well as this big band sound.
Okay. Very zurna, this part.
Yes.
Where it jumps in like that, high pitch.
And this is a clarinet doing that.
Yeah, it's a clarinet, yeah.
So it's very interesting. You hear that multiple dumbegs. You have a bass dumbeg, a treble dumbeg, other instruments. This was one of his earlier albums, so he didn't have so many saxophones and all that going on.
Yeah.
But this is the start of his big band sound right here.
He's killing it on that clarinet.
And future groups, Armenian groups, started adding the guitar, as a bottom for the group, because adding guitar and bass really drives the music. I mean, you need that drop. It just drops right on that beat, you know.
Well, this is making me want to dance right now. So, they always ask that question, like, if you could go back in time.
What it would be like?
This would be a nice one. To go back to one of these big Kefs in the 1960s and see what it was all going down. See our grandparents having a great time. Okay, so...
So now I want to play a different example, and this goes back to Chick Ganemian, because now a jazz artist has discovered what Chick has been doing, and he likes his playing, and he invites him to play with his group. The album is Herbie Mann's Impressions of the Middle East. Herbie Mann was a jazz flautist, and he was one of the bigger improvisationist jazz people of the time. And so he took a lot of influence from the music, from our music.
For this album he did.
For this album. Even in the future, they gave live performances doing this repertoire because he liked the music. And so one song on his album is called Üsküdar. And that's a region in Üsküdar. And Üsküdar is a very popular song amongst the Armenians. They enjoyed it. And so he took that song and he's playing it in this jazz fashion, and then he goes into what we would call a taksim, an improv, but on the flute. But the main part of the song is this song, and he also has other titles on this album: the Oud and the Pussycat, Yavas, Dance of the Semites, Incense. You know, it's his vision of the Middle East.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I should play Üsküdar or Incense, because it really gives you that sense of the Middle East and what they liked.
And Chicken is playing on this album.
And Chicken is playing on this album.
But all of them, or just those few songs?
This whole album he's playing.
All right.
So we're gonna listen to Incense.
All right, let's do it.
You hear Chick in the intro right there. Doo-doo.
Little drum. And this Herbie Man is the saxophone player, or
he's the flute player.
Flute player.
You hear him in this intro. And Chick's actually he's just filling in on this piece, but he does do some very exciting solos on this album. I mean, to me, the title actually fits this song. For me, if I close my eyes, I can see like incense rising.
A smoky little, like, not a bazaar, but like
you could almost picture yourself
lounges.
walking down like a shady bazaar almost, you know?
Yeah.
Something like, this almost sounds to me like a Maroon 5 or like a,
Well, you know what? They made all these movies taking place in the Middle East, probably throughout the years, everything from Casablanca to today, and they probably used soundtracks like this in those movies, or at least got their inspiration from what should be this, what music should we have while they're in this scene in Algeria. Let's find some albums and listen to them, and then we'll get some ideas.
Right, and sometimes they even ask these musicians to play with the orchestra, because where are you gonna find an oud player?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, Chick Anemian did a lot. John Bilizikjian, an oud player from LA who recently passed, he did a lot of movies and TV shows, and so
not surprised. Well, it's funny you say that. I grew up always noticing the duduk in movies and stuff. The duduk is another Armenian instrument. It's a wind instrument, but it was in Yu-Gi-Oh, a show that we used to watch in the intro and outro. Gladiator, Jivan Gasparian plays in that. So that was like an Armenian instrument I would always notice. And the oud, I'm not surprised that Armenians were also playing that.
The duduk is also featured in one of Hollywood's most premier movies, which was The Passion of the Christ.
Yeah.
The scene where he's carrying that cross, there's a short scene there where they're playing Deli Yaman. They're actually playing Deli Yaman.
I love that song. It's one of my favorites.
The artists and producers, in fact, of Hollywood, they liked the music. They enjoyed it. And so they took influence for it for their productions, especially if it was Middle Eastern themed, you know? They want it to be historically accurate.
But you even hear it today in a lot of, whenever a hip-hop song or whatever song wants to add a little Middle Eastern vibe to it, it probably comes from the roots, which is this era of the initial meshing of Middle Eastern sounds in Hollywood, let's say.
Mm-hmm. So I have another example here, and this is jumping to Buddy Sarkeesian and his influence, because, you know, at this time, this jazz movement, this psychedelic music, funk music, started really becoming popular. And so Buddy Sarkeesian decided to take his Mecca Jazz Quartet, his Mecca 4, which was Manny Petro on guitar and Freddie Elias on violin, and I believe it is Paul Mouradian on tambourine. It's not credited, but there's only so many people that play tambourine like that. Mm-hmm. And I managed to find this 45 record, which is titled Dubkey Twist and Daddy Lolo. Daddy Lolo is Daddy Lolo. But, you know, to accommodate to the American audience, they called it Daddy Lolo.
Daddy Lolo.
You know, because if they put a Daddy Lolo, what's a Daddy Lolo to an American? So, and they also put twist, you know, so 45s, this was a big thing for them. So now you're going to hear the influence of American country music and jazz mixed into Armenian music.
Oh my God.
So it's a very different sound, and you're not going to expect it.
All right, cool. I'm excited.
Is that that you can do? Let me introduce to you. It involves a little beat, where the little top can be. It involves a little beat, where the little top can be. Opa ni na ni na na, ni na ya bro na na. Opa ni na ni na na, ni na ya bro na na.
It's Armenian, huh? Like they're singing Armenian words? I can't even tell.
Hopaninani, this is a Greek song.
Well, I know the Hopanina thing.
But the Armenians love this song. But then they decided to take it and make it more Americanized.
Yeah, it's all over the place. It's awesome. It's like, I can't even pinpoint it because you can't really pinpoint it on one thing.
Right.
It's such a fusion, huh?
That was the concept.
Yeah.
And you hear those multiple drums. It really makes the difference.
Yeah.
And they're singing in English.
You know the lyrics?
I know the actual lyrics, but you know, I've never studied this.
Not, you know, Daddy Lolo, not Daddy
Now
Lolo.
listen to the solo. Very country.
Oh, I was about to say, it's so country. Leave it to Armenians to put jazz and country
Right.
together.
You know, so they had fun with it, the Armenians.
No, but that's how art is, and these are artists, you know? If you're just really replicating the same thing over and over again, then you're just a record machine, huh?
That's right.
Yeah.
You're a parrot.
Yeah. You're just preserving something, but it's not growing, it's not thriving.
That's right.
Culture changes like that, you know? That's why I'm not always upset to hear people try something new, something that maybe not isn't the most traditional Armenian, but you know, it's
Right. And
it's-
that's why I see it as my job to first preserve what's being lost. But I do want to grow my sound as a musician, but first step is I have to preserve the traditional roots of this music.
yeah, you start off with that. We need to make sure that it's, and I think you're doing a great
And
job, by
people
the
are
way,
educated
Andrew.
about it because people don't know about the music.
I think you've done a great job so far of managing to collect all this. I mean, just looking at your studio right now, I'm seeing you've done a great job of collecting and preserving and bringing it all together. And just in case, or just so that there can be that next generation of people who have that option if they do get interested, hey, we have the resources and we have the knowledge still available for you guys here on High Tuk Talks.
Yeah. Let's take a listen to the other side of this because this is like one of my favorite 45 records out of this whole collection. And this is Daddy Lolo.
I really hope there's some music university kids here studying or doing research papers, PhDs on something like this, because I would love to hear more research on this kind of work. This is so cool to me.
So this is Daddy Lolo. This is an Armenian song now with
With the same influence.
with the same
thing.
influence. And I actually don't know what language she's actually singing in.
No, no. Very Turkish.
track, it actually features Buddy solos. You're gonna hear him solo like his trademark solo was.
All right,
Very wild.
Drum solo, right?
Yes.
Dumbek solo.
That's the examples that I have of American music playing its role and having its influence on Armenian music, while Armenian music also having its influence on American music. It went both ways.
Before we go, Andrew, I'd like you to play one more song.
What I'll do is I'll play a song that was created here in America by an Armenian by the name of Edward Bogosian. He composed the song Sude Sude.
Oh.
And he's one of the first generations to really interact with American culture and continue the music here in America. And so this song was made popular on my grandfather's first album that he cut, Kef Time Las Vegas. And this song actually wasn't going to make the album. It was because of the person who funded the album said, I want this song on there, otherwise I'm not going to fund it anymore.
Because it was so popular or whatever this song?
No, because he liked the song.
He just liked it.
And it just so happened that that was the longest song on that side of that album. It was the longest track on that album and became the most popular song of the
it's
album.
a hit.
It's
I mean,
the hit.
everyone knows that song, and it's probably one of my favorites as well. So we're kind of glad that guy forced your grandpa to put it on there, huh?
So we'll do Sude Sude. And please, join me, Haig. This will be very fun, having you play Dumbeg.
Oh, I'm so down. Awesome. Okay, Andrew, I have one last question for you, actually.
Yes, Haig.
We've talked about a lot of Armenian music today, a lot of American influence on Armenian music, Armenian music history, but I want to know, all ethnic music aside, what's your favorite American band?
I have a favorite American artist.
American artist.
American artist. And it's very classy, very, very, very Andrew-like of me to say, but I enjoy Frank Sinatra.
All right.
And the reason I enjoy Frank Sinatra is because he was in an age before synthesizers and keyboards and before technology really took over the music industry. Authentic.
Yeah.
There is no talent like in modern day music like Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra had talent.
Well, it goes to show because everyone loves Frank Sinatra. He's still a legend today.
He didn't need auto-tune. He just performed and entertained in his fashion. And that is something that I respect. And his orchestra behind him was always fantastic.
Yeah.
Composed of great musicians from all around the United States, just pouring their soul into the music.
Well, I'm a big Rat Pack fan too, and I love all those Italian guys, so great pick, I'll say that. Well, maybe you could play us a Taksim on our way out.
Sure.
But Andrew, thanks again, man. This was awesome.
Thank you, Haig. I had fun. This is a great. Let's see if we can do a two-parter.
Yeah, maybe we'll do another one. I'm down. I'm so down. There's so much more to talk about. You're listening to Haitug Talks, the official podcast of the AYF West. I'm Haig Minasyan, and we're just a couple of Armenians playing music in the world.
A couple of Armenians talking in the world.